April 18th, the Biden administration announced that the Transportation Security Administration will no longer enforce the federal mandate requiring masks in all U.S. airports and on-board aircraft.
Finally!
Effective immediately, masks are optional for all airport employees, crew members, and customers inside U.S. airports and on-board aircraft.
This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and the clip that you just saw was of a U.S. pilot announcing in mid-flight that there are no longer any mask mandates, to which the entire plane erupts in cheers, and rightly so. I mean, it's been 2 years of this nonsense, and we also have others on the plane singing to the passengers to go ahead and take their masks off. Throw away your mask. Yeah, they're pretty happy about it. Pretty happy about it indeed. And here it is, guys. Judge Catherine Kimball Mazel's ruling striking down transportation mask mandates. And here's the ruling where essentially she said that the CDC is overstepping their authority and therefore shouldn't have even been doing this in the first place. Now, of course, we're hearing that the Trump-appointed judge was deemed not qualified by the Bar Association. She voided the mask mandates on planes and other travel. Well, folks, the Bar Association is one of the most corrupt organizations there are. So when they said, back when she was appointed, that she's not qualified, well, I knew right away that this is probably going to end up being a pretty good pick. And here we are. CDC now says public transportation mask mandate is no longer in effect. The TSA is no longer enforcing mask mandates, as numerous other airlines are now announcing that they won't require face coverings. Meanwhile, if you're a Canadian or if you happen to be traveling to Canada, here's the situation here, guys. Travelers entering Canada still required to wear a mask for 14 days after arrival. This is just absolute lunacy. If you think you're free in this country, just take a look around at what's going on in other places around the world and how the restrictions have been lifted, and then you compare that to British Columbia, Canada in particular. We're some of the most oppressed in the world right now. It's unbelievable, but don't get your hopes up too much about what you see as far as the easings of restrictions in the US and in Europe and other places around the world, because we have to pay very close attention to what's been going on all along in China. I want to remind you guys that Wuhan hosted a massive water park party as the coronavirus concerns receded. This is a while back. It was ground zero in the coronavirus pandemic, and it underwent the world's first and arguably the strictest lockdown. Now the central city of Wuhan appears to have moved on from the virus, as thousands of revelers gathered in an open-air water park for an electronic music festival without any masks or social distancing measures in sight. That was then, guys. Fast forward to what's happening today, and it's absolutely unbelievable. Over 25 million people have been locked down in Shanghai for quite some time. They got drones going around right now. It's telling people to comply with the restrictions and to control your soul's desire for freedom. Do not open up the window and sing. Guys, they're going around killing people's pets right now. Just because in this case of this video here, the dog owner tested positive for COVID-19. And here we see the extremes of where this is all heading, folks. Here we can see they are destroying the grown vegetables and the food supply that the locals have in their own backyards, literally going around destroying the food crops. Why are they doing this, guys? We're going to talk about all of that and much, much more in this video. But before we do, guys, I'd ask that you check me out here at pressfortruth.ca/donate if you appreciate my efforts to bring you this info. Here you can do a one-time donation with PayPal. You can contribute some Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies by clicking here. You can join me on Subscribestar, where you can sign up for a monthly reoccurring contribution. You can also do that by clicking here and signing up for any amount that you like. You can also send an e-transfer to dan@pressfortruth.ca, or if you like to keep it old school, you can send cash or checks or simply just words of encouragement to my P.O. Box. Links are all located for that in the description below, guys. Thank you so much to anybody who does contribute to my efforts to counter all this crazy propaganda. Now, speaking of that, guys, I want to start with this. This is a video I put out back in 2020 called Masks and the Manufacturing of Conformity. We are now the subjects of a giant ash experiment. Human beings are social creatures who, for the most part, want to be liked and not seen as an outsider. This natural condition causes many to defy logic and reason in order to receive comfort and acceptance to a group. In psychology, the ash conformity experiment proved that the majority of people's beliefs, ideas, and understandings of various things can be easily influenced and steered into a desired direction that contradicts what they know to be true. In this video, Dan Dix of Press for Truth shows how the whole world is currently the subject of a giant ash conformity experiment, which is why you may want to think twice about wearing a mask. Really important information to understand in this video, guys. I'm going to include links to all of this in the description below if you haven't seen any of it. But it's important to understand because it's led to stuff like this. You may recall this one exclusive. Police visit mask-exempt man at his home on behalf of a frightened Canada Post employee. I remember when I was reporting on that, I was thinking, wow, this is crazy how bad this is getting. And believe it or not, things are even worse than that. In Ontario, police killed a 73-year-old man after he refused to wear a mask, literally. In this video, Dan Dix of Press for Truth covers a recent case where police in Ontario, Canada went to the home of a man who refused to wear a mask earlier at a grocery store, and they ended up killing him at his home. Again, all over the mask mandates, guys. If you haven't seen it, I'd strongly encourage you to check out this video, Confirmed, the absolute science behind masks and the proof they don't work, with Denny Rancor. He is a PhD, a former professor of physics at the University of Ottawa, and in this paper, he breaks down the science behind why masks don't work. So it's incredibly important information to understand before we go on to what's happening today, guys. So if you haven't seen this, go back and catch up on all that. But let's get into what's going on right now. The CDC has just said that public transportation mask mandates are no longer in effect. Bloomberg reports that the CDC says the national mask requirement on public transportation is no longer in effect. Citing a Florida court ruling against the measure, the CDC says it will not enforce the mask order, but continues to recommend that people wear masks in indoor and outdoor transportation settings. As a reminder, U.S. Senate voted 57-40 last month to overturn public health order requiring masks on airplanes and other forms of public transportation, drawing a veto threat from President Joe Biden. And it goes on to show here a bunch of, liberals melting down over this idea that this unscientific move is going to put us all in a dangerous place. Like this guy, hi United. When I bought my tickets for me, my wife who is pregnant, and our unvaccinated 4-year-old, I assumed you could continue to have a mask mandate. Now you cancel it and we'll have to board our return flight under your no mask requirement policy. Thanks so much. Complaining about the fact. But here, as the article points out, nothing stops you from wearing a mask if you want to. If you're free to wear a mask, you can do so if you like. But if they work, they'll protect you. And if they don't, why mandate them? And that's really the major point here, is that they don't work. And the mandates have been ridiculous. And finally, a judge has stepped up and done the right thing and overturned this ridiculous mandate, which never really was a law in the first place. So let's take a look at what's happening in Canada, because this is the fact that, after the CDC has essentially conceded with the judge, so it is lifted, although there may be an appeal. They are probably going to try to reverse this thing. Not probably. This thing will eventually be reversed. But as it is now, it has been lifted. But that apparently isn't changing the way the Canadian government wants to treat anybody who enters that country, unless they happen to be coming from Ukraine. Anybody unvaccinated can come in, no problem. But if you're Canadian and you happen to pop over the border to fill up your gas tank or something like that and then come back, you're apparently going to be forced to wear a mask for 14 days in public. This is just absolute insanity, as we see here. Whether you've toured the globe or just stopped in the U.S. to fill up your gas tank, when you return to Canada, you must wear a face mask in public for 14 days. The federal border requirement, however, is now out of step with the rules in BC and almost every other province where masking is no longer legally required in public and indoor spaces. And I want to, again, to the point, remind you not to get too carried away about seeing these other places who have eased up on the restrictions and thinking, why aren't we there yet? I mean, you know, you got Florida, you got Texas, you got a whole bunch of countries in Europe. Why is Canada, you know, lagging behind here? Well, again, we have to reiterate the fact that this is really just the calm before the storm. This is that Wuhan party moment, right? Where, again, a couple of years ago, things were lifted, everybody was partying, good time, let's all have a big bash. And you fast forward 2 years and look how they're doing now, guys. And China has always been the blueprint for what's going to eventually come in the West and in North America. So we have to continue to pay attention to that. And here we are. Here we saw easings of the restrictions. It's all lifted. You know, Wuhan hosts massive party. Again, this is August of 2020. You fast forward to today, and as I said, you got drones flying around telling people to stay in their homes. Just listen to this. It's totally dystopian nightmare stuff. Please comply with restrictions. Control your soul's desire for freedom. Do not open the windows and sing. This is like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. And there's footage, lots of it. I'm not going to play it for you here because it's so brutal and just insane to see something like this happening. But they're going around killing pets. There's lots of footage of bags and bags of dogs and cats just waiting on the ground to be bashed, and they're literally just clubbing pets with clubs openly on the street simply because the pet's owners are testing positive for COVID-19, guys. If you don't think things like this can ever come to the West or could ever happen here, you just wait until a new big bad scary variant is announced, and you just wait and see how far people are willing to go when it comes to giving up their freedoms and where that line in the sand is going to be drawn. For many, like the people here in China, they'll put up with all sorts of stuff. And now it's getting to the point where they are literally destroying their crops in their backyards, guys. Look at this. Walking around, digging up their food. Why do you think this is happening? Why would they do this? It's because there is a global food crisis being engineered. And right now, Shanghai seems to be a bit of the testing grounds for how this is all going to play out, how are people going to react to such a thing, and how they're going to be able to control them after the fact. I mean, just look at this. They're digging up these people's food, their only last source of a sustainable lifestyle. They're destroying it right now. And again, this is why we really have to reiterate the importance of stepping outside of the system completely and no longer being reliant on that government or no longer reliant on those banks. But it's so scary to think that if you work so hard to get to the point where you can have your own property and have your own self-sustainable garden, that these white suit thugs could just come in and start ripping it all down is just something we need to think about moving forward, guys. Now, in China, they are highly unarmed. I don't think something like what we saw here is necessarily going to happen anytime soon in the United States, for example, and not necessarily in Canada here as well. But again, this is why they're working on all these laws for people to not be able to protect themselves from enemies, foreign and domestic, right? From any kind of a threat that is coming to threaten your home, your livelihood, and your family, like what these guys are doing by destroying crops. Guys, now is the time. It's beyond crunch time. We have to focus on getting ourselves out of debt, focus on not being reliant, as I said, on the banks of the grocery stores or the government whatsoever, working towards having that self-sustainable garden so you have your own food source, but then also working towards how you can protect that moving forward, guys, because as I said, China very much so has been a blueprint for what we've seen to come in the West and in North America. And look with their social credit, the Sesame credit system in China. If you're not familiar with that, just look up, do a search on my website for Sesame credit or social credit, and you'll see the video reports I've done years ago showing how this is going to be a system that starts out as kind of being fun, almost like a game on an app, but eventually it will morph into, you know, you say the wrong thing on Facebook and you're not going to be allowed to hop on that airplane. Well, all those things are already happening in China. And again, that too is a blueprint for what's coming here in the West. So don't get all too, in party mode about this whole judge lifting of the mask mandates. Yes, it's something to be celebrated right now. Yes, it's something that should have been done a long time ago. But are we heading into more lockdowns, more restrictive measures, and more of a time where this oligarchy elite is going to continue to clamp down on our rights? Absolutely, guys. We are now in a pre-COVID world and a post-COVID-19 84 world, and it's not going to change anytime soon. I hate to sound defeatist or anything like that, but it's really not. It's a warning that, you know, don't get too excited about the liftings of the easings of the restrictions and the mandates. This thing is far from over. As I said, we are currently just in the eye of the hurricane, guys. It's the calm before the storm. So continue to work on getting yourself out of debt. Continue to work on not being reliant on the governments or the banks. Continue to build that self-sustainable food source for yourself and your family moving forward, and continue to figure out ways to protect that food source from any kind of threat that may come and threaten you and your family. Just wanted to bring all that to your attention today, guys. Once again, if you do appreciate my efforts to bring you this information, don't forget to check me out here at pressfortruth.ca/donate. Once again, I want to thank you, everybody, whoever has contributed to my efforts. It's only because of you that I'm able to continue to do this work on a daily basis. So thank you once again for that, everybody. Once again, please click that thumbs up button. Share this video with your friends and family who you think needs to see this the most. And stay tuned. We're going to have more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.